A werewolf shifter romance audiobook, written by Jane. Epilogue. The scent of betrayal clung to Anya like a shroud woven from deceit. It was a suffocating fragrance, far more potent than the cloying perfumes of her father's court. She stood at the grand, arched window of her chambers, the vibrant tapestry of the city below, a mocking contrast to the desolation in her soul. 2 days. 2 days since the words had fallen from her father's lips like stones, crushing her dreams. You are a living treaty, Anya, the price of peace. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a gilded cage, a treaty, a silk-dressed sacrifice. Was this her destiny, to be bartered away like livestock? Anya, whose silver tongue could charm kings and whose sharp wit could disarm diplomats, was now reduced to a pawn. She paced, her silk gown rustling like dry leaves, the sound a stark echo in the cavernous room. Outside, the world continued its symphony of commerce and conversation, oblivious to her personal apocalypse. They don't understand, do they? She thought, her hands clenching. They think this is an honor, a duty. But honor felt like a hollow word when stripped of choice, and duty felt like a branding iron across her very soul. She paused, catching her reflection in the polished glass. Her eyes, usually sparkling with intelligence, were shadowed, haunted by the specter of a future without her voice. Anya? The soft query, a ripple in the stillness, pulled her back. Ilara, her closest confidant, stood framed in the doorway, her usually cheerful face etched with concern. Ilara, who understood the intricate dance of words, the power Anya wielded with every carefully chosen phrase. It's just a nightmare, isn't it? Anya whispered, her voice rough, barely her own. She didn't wait for an answer because she knew. The nightmare was real. The Grand Council Hall buzzed like a hive of agitated wasps, their collective hum a familiar symphony of discontent. Anya, however, felt a vibrant thrill course through her veins. This was her stage, her arena. Before her, 2 stubborn clan elders, their faces florid with stubborn pride, traded accusations across a polished oak table that gleamed under the midday sun. Their feud over grazing lands threatened to unravel months of delicate peace talks. Gentlemen, please. Anya's voice, a melodic blend of authority and calm, cut through the clamor. She didn't shout, she didn't need to. Her presence commanded attention, a magnetic pull that silenced the room. Is this how we honor the truce? With a battle of bellows? A low chuckle rippled through the gallery, easing the tension. Anya offered a wry smile. Old Man Boren, she began, her gaze softening as it met the elder on the left, his beard bristling like a badger's brush. Your grandfather, if I recall, spoke of the wisdom of shared harvests, did he not? And Chief Rorik, her eyes now held the chief on the right. Your clan's renown for foresight is legendary. Surely a solution lies not in dividing what little grass remains, but in nurturing new growth? She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur, yet clear enough to carry. Imagine. She painted the picture with words. A joint effort. Your herds grazing side by side in fields enriched by shared labor. A bounty for both, secured not by boundaries, but by bonds. She paused, letting the vision settle. They want to feel respected, to feel heard. And just like that, the stiff shoulders softened, the angry glares flickered. The 2 men, enemies moments before, exchanged hesitant glances. Because of her words, because of her ability to bridge divides, a fragile peace was being woven. This was her life's purpose. This was her art. She lived for these moments, where her intellect and eloquence reshaped reality. Perhaps, Old Man Boren rumbled, stroking his beard. Chief Rorik nodded, a grudging respect dawning in his eyes. Anya suppressed a sigh of relief. Victory. She felt exhilarated, her mind already spinning possibilities for the next phase of negotiations, when a shadow fell across the sun-drenched floor. A harried staffer, his face pale and eyes wide with urgency, stood at the hall's entrance. The air thickened. The elegant lines of her father's study always offered a sense of stability, a bastion of order in a chaotic world. Today, however, the heavy oak desk and towering bookshelves felt like the walls of a trap. Her father, Lord Valerius, stood by the window, his back to her, his shoulders slumped in a way Anya had never seen. Usually, he was a pillar of unyielding authority, his voice a commanding roar that brooked no argument. "Father?" Anya's own voice was tentative, a stark contrast to her usual confident tone. The news from the council meeting had been swift, ominous whispers of a renewed conflict with the North, a brutal border skirmish that had claimed too many lives. She expected to discuss tactics, to lend her diplomatic skills to avert a full-blown war. Instead, silence. He turned slowly, his face grim, etched with a fatigue that seemed to age him decades in a single afternoon. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were shadowed with a peculiar blend of desperation and a cold resolve that sent a shiver down Anya's spine. She felt it, a shift in the air, a premonition of something deeply wrong. "Anya," he began, his voice devoid of its usual warmth, flat and detached. "A ceasefire has been negotiated." Relief washed over her, brief and intoxicating. "Thank the spirits," she exclaimed, stepping forward. "How can I help? Perhaps mediating?" But then he raised a hand, cutting her off. "You are the help, child." His words fell like hammer blows, one after another. "The Northern Alpha, Ronan." He demanded a binding alliance, a blood tie. "You, Anya, are to be his mate, a living treaty. You leave at dawn." Anya stared, dumbfounded. The world spun. Her breath caught in her throat, a strangled sound that never escaped. Married? To the silent Alpha? The barbaric leader of a pack rumored to communicate only through whispers of the mind? A man whose territory was shrouded in chilling silence and ancient, forgotten curses. "No," she choked out, finding her voice though it trembled. "Father, you cannot. I have work to do here. My skills are needed. I am not some broodmare to be traded." Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. This wasn't just a political marriage. This was an annihilation of her very essence. How could she, a woman of words, survive in a world without them? Her future, once bright and limitless, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Deep down, she knew the truth. Her father had sold her. For the price of peace, he had sacrificed his daughter. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across the ancient maps unrolled on her study table, each line a cruel reminder of the vast, unknown territory she would soon be forced to inhabit. Outside, the night air was heavy with the distant sounds of her father's guard, preparing for dawn. Anya, despite the late hour, felt a frantic energy humming beneath her skin. Sleep felt like a betrayal, a surrender to the inevitable. Alara sat opposite her, a half-empty goblet of wine forgotten in her hand, her gentle features drawn with sorrow. "Anya, are you sure there's no other way?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "What other way, Alara?" Anya snapped, then immediately softened, reaching across to grip her friend's hand. "Forgive me, it feels like I'm standing on the edge of an abyss. They say his pack doesn't even speak. Can you imagine? Me, silenced? My thoughts, trapped inside my own head?" Her voice trembled with a raw vulnerability she rarely showed. Every thought, every opinion, every feeling, unheard, like a beautiful song composed for a deaf audience. Alara squeezed her hand. "But you're Anya. You'll find a way to make them listen. You always do." "But how?" Anya paced again, her frustration boiling over. "My entire life, built on words, on wit, on persuasion. What am I without it? A ghost? A puppet?" She ran a hand through her hair, desperate. "I need to remember, every debate I've won, every heart I've swayed, I need to hold on to it. It's all I have left." She started recounting stories, almost compulsively. "Remember when I convinced Lord Torvin to reopen the trade routes simply by appealing to his sense of legacy? Or that time I talked down the furious merchants' guild leader just by listening, truly listening, to his grievances?" She spoke faster, as if trying to exhaust her voice, trying to empty her well of words before the long, dry silence. Ilara listened, tears glistening in her eyes, understanding the desperate ritual. Anya was trying to store up memories of her voice, to bottle the essence of who she was because the future promised to steal it all. The thought of being trapped in a gilded cage, her mind stripped bare and her soul unheard, was her deepest terror. She kept talking, weaving tales of past triumphs, of a self that was vibrant and powerful. She clung to these stories, to these words, as a drowning person clings to a piece of driftwood. What followed was the agonizing realization that no matter how hard she tried, no words could ever truly prepare her for the silence. Soon after, a distant horn blew, a mournful sound that pierced the pre-dawn gloom. It was the summons. The hour of her departure had arrived. Anya's eyes met Ilara's, a silent plea passing between them. The final heartbreaking farewell was not spoken aloud, because some goodbyes are too painful for words. The journey north had been a blur of desolate landscapes and Anya's frantic internal monologue, a desperate attempt to catalog every word she'd ever spoken, every witty retort, every heartfelt declaration. But no mental inventory could prepare her for this. The air itself seemed to hum with an oppressive quiet as their escort approached the colossal gates of the northern stronghold. Stone, dark and ancient, rose from the earth like jagged teeth, silent sentinels against a sky the color of bruised plums. The silence here wasn't merely the absence of sound. It was a living entity, pressing down on Anya, stealing the very breath from her lungs. Anya dismounted, her silk dress feeling absurdly fragile against the stark majesty of the place. She opened her mouth, ready to introduce herself, to offer a polite greeting, but no sound came. Her tongue felt thick, useless. Because of that, a wave of panic, cold and sharp, washed over her. She tried again, a desperate croak, but it dissolved into the profound, suffocating stillness. A group of northern pack members emerged from the fortress, their movements fluid and silent. Their faces were devoid of expression, their eyes, however, held an unsettling depth. They communicated without a single uttered word, their gazes shifting, a silent choreography unfolding before Anya's bewildered eyes. It was like watching a play where all the dialogue was implied, understood only by the actors. Then, he appeared. Alpha Ronin. He was a force of nature carved from granite, impossibly tall, with shoulders that seemed to dwarf the stone archway he emerged from. His hair, dark as a raven's wing, framed a face that was severe, unyielding. But it was his eyes that truly captivated Anya, eyes the color of molten gold, intense and ancient, like sunlight hitting a hidden vein of precious ore. They swept over her, a silent inventory, and in that moment, Anya felt as though he saw straight through her, stripping away every carefully constructed facade. Her heart hammered, a frantic drum against her ribs. He offered no greeting, no gesture, just that unnervingly direct gaze. The tension broke as one of his warriors stepped forward, gesturing for Anya to follow. She didn't know what scared her more, Ronin's intimidating silence, or the terrifying realization that her greatest weapon, her voice, was utterly useless here. She was a bird without wings, a fish out of water. She felt exposed, vulnerable, her every private thought suddenly feeling dangerously loud in her own head. What followed was her silent escort through labyrinthine corridors, each step taking her deeper into this world of voiceless communication. The stone walls seemed to absorb all sound, trapping her in a vacuum. She yearned for a familiar voice, a distant murmur, anything to break the crushing quiet. Instead, she felt only the persistent, unsettling buzz at the edges of her own mind, like a trapped fly. The chambers assigned to Anya were opulent, perhaps even beautiful, with furs draped over stone benches and intricate carvings adorning the walls. But to Anya, it felt like a cage, gilded and suffocating. The silence was absolute, heavier here than anywhere else. She tried to speak to the silent attendant who brought her a tray of food. Thank you, she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. The attendant simply nodded, their eyes holding a deep, knowing understanding that chilled Anya to the bone. It was as if they already knew her thoughts, her futile attempts to communicate. Frustration boiled over. She pointed at the steaming stew, then at her mouth, miming the act of eating. The attendant responded with a series of graceful, almost fluid hand gestures, a silent ballet that conveyed perfect meaning to them, but left Anya utterly bewildered. Anya's mind spun, desperate for a foothold, a way to bridge this chasm. This is impossible. How do they live like this? And then, a whisper, faint but distinct, brushed against the edge of her consciousness. It wasn't spoken. It was thought. A clear, empathetic message. You will learn. Anya gasped, clutching her head. It was fleeting, like a half-remembered dream, but undeniably there. It was one of the many telepathic whispers she'd caught since arriving, but this one felt clearer, more intentional. Her heart pounded. This was her deepest terror realized. In this silent world, her every private thought could indeed become a weapon used against her. She pressed her palms against her temples, trying to push the phantom voices away, to build a wall around her mind. She felt exposed, stripped bare. Her breath hitched. No, I won't. I can't let them in. She curled into herself on the plush furs, desperately trying to silence the buzzing, the intrusive whispers that now felt like a violation. She focused on mundane things, on counting the carved wolves on the ceiling, anything to distract her mind from the terrifying openness. She didn't know what scared her more, being understood or the thought of not understanding. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was a cruel twist of the knife, that the one place she felt truly vulnerable was within her own mind. A sharp, almost physical thrum reverberated through the room, jerking Anya upright. Ronan stood in the doorway, a silent, imposing figure. His golden eyes, predatory and knowing, seemed to pierce through her carefully constructed mental barriers, seeking out the very thoughts she was desperate to hide. The space between them burned. The ceremony was a hushed, stark affair, devoid of music or spoken vows. Anya stood on a raised dais in the center of a cavernous hall, surrounded by the silent, watchful faces of Ronan's pack. Their thoughts were a muted hum at the edge of her perception, still too jumbled to decipher, but she felt the weight of their expectations, their judgment. Ronan stood opposite her, a statue of stoicism. He wore ceremonial leathers, dark as midnight, adorned with intricate silver symbols that seemed to absorb what little light there was. His face, however, remained a mask. Anya, encased in a simple, heavy silk gown, felt utterly stripped of agency. Her initial goal to resist, to argue, had been replaced by a desperate, quiet determination to survive this ordeal without shattering. A revered elder, ancient and wizened, stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. He raised a hand, and the low hum of the pack's thoughts seemed to deepen, a collective silent reverence. A silver cuff, simple yet elegant, was presented. Ronan took it, his strong fingers surprisingly gentle as he fastened it around Anya's wrist. As the cool metal settled against her skin, their fingers brushed. In that precise moment, a jolt, like raw lightning, arced between them. Anya gasped, a sound lost in the silence. It wasn't just a physical touch. It was a searing rush of pure emotion, a torrent of loneliness, duty, and an undeniable primal desire that slammed into her. Her breath caught. She felt a reciprocal wave from him, a flash of surprise, perhaps even a reluctant curiosity. It was brief, intense, and utterly unnerving. Her world tilted. She quickly pulled her hand back, her pulse racing. the lingering warmth of his touch a brand on her skin. She didn't know what to make of it. Was it the fated mate bond they whispered about in legends, or merely the shock of unexpected contact? Her mind spun, trying to reconcile the cold alpha with the fleeting warmth she'd felt. Was he truly so distant, or was there something hidden beneath that fortress of silence? She felt it, clear as day, a fragile connection trying to form in the space between them. The elder then presented Ronan with a similar cuff, which he affixed to his own wrist. The ceremony concluded with a silent, collective bow from the pack members, acknowledging their new Luna. Anya felt the heavy weight of her new reality settle upon her, a profound silence broken only by the persistent, echoing whispers of unfamiliar thoughts in her own mind. She was Ronan's Luna, bound to a voiceless man in a silent world. Her new immediate goal was terrifyingly simple: survive, and perhaps find a way to hear the true song beneath Ronan's impenetrable silence. As the pack dispersed, a quiet understanding seemed to pass between her and Ronan, a silent acknowledgement of the impossible situation they now shared. She knew, deep down, that her fight for a voice in this world had only just begun. The days in Ronan's fortress blurred into a tapestry woven from silence and a desperate need to understand. Anya watched, she observed, she mimicked. Every pack member moved with an almost ethereal grace, their interactions a ballet of knowing glances, subtle hand gestures, and a constant silent hum that resonated in the air, or so it seemed. Anya, however, heard only the profound, oppressive quiet. She yearned for the sharp click of a heel on stone, the murmur of distant voices, the comfort of human speech. Instead, there was only the unnerving quiet, punctuated by the occasional fleeting whispers of thought at the very edge of her perception. One afternoon, standing in a sun-drenched courtyard where pack members trained with silent precision, Anya tried to communicate with a young warrior. He had a small cut on his hand. She pointed to it, then gestured towards the healing herbs she'd seen in the kitchens. She then opened her mouth, forming the word heal without sound. The warrior looked at her, his expression unreadable, then performed a series of rapid hand signs. His eyes, however, seemed to hold a flicker of amusement. Anya's face flushed. She understood nothing. Because of that, frustration gnawed at her, a bitter taste in her mouth. She tried another gesture, a question about the training methods, but again, received only a silent, complex reply. This is impossible, she thought, a scream echoing in her mind, unheard. She felt like a clumsy, oversized bird trying to join a flock of elegant swans. Her despair was a heavy cloak. She knew her worth had always been in her articulation, her ability to use words as tools, as weapons, as bridges. Now those tools were useless. She felt herself shrinking, her vibrant personality dimming in the crushing silence. But then, a subtle shift occurred. As she focused intently on the warrior's hands, trying desperately to decipher their meaning, a jumble of soft, fleeting images, like half-formed dreams, flickered through her mind. Pain, training, healer, soon. They were disjointed, indistinct, but they were there. A small, almost imperceptible surge of something new. Anya gasped, clutching her head. She recognized the warrior's thoughts. The flicker of amusement she'd seen on his face earlier now made sense. He'd been thinking, she'll get there, it's a slow dance. A tentative spark of determination ignited within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, the silence wasn't entirely impenetrable. Anya's attempts at silent communication were as clumsy as a newborn deer. She tried to mimic the elegant hand gestures of the pack, often getting them wrong, leading to confused or politely amused glances from those around her. It was humiliating. One morning, however, Ronan assigned her a mentor, Lyra, an older, quiet woman with eyes that held the wisdom of ancient forests. Lyra moved like a shadow, graceful and soft, her presence a balm against the usual intensity of the pack. She communicated mostly through shared tasks and gentle, guiding telepathic impressions, rather than formal instruction. Lyra led Anya through the pack's daily rituals, from the meticulous weaving of fishing nets to the precise movements of tending the medicinal herb garden. Lyra didn't speak, of course, but her thoughts, when she allowed them to brush Anya's mind, were clear and steady, like a calm river. Observe, feel, understand. Anya struggled. Her mind, so used to the rapid-fire exchange of words, felt sluggish and clumsy when trying to grasp these nonverbal cues. She constantly worried she was missing something vital, or worse, broadcasting her own frustrated thoughts for all to see. One afternoon, Lyra was teaching Anya how to prepare herbs, the delicate leaves releasing their aromatic oils between her fingers. Anya, frustrated by her inability to follow a particularly intricate set of hand movements, let out a silent groan of exasperation. Her mind, unbidden, projected a vivid image, herself, tangled in a pile of herbs, looking utterly ridiculous. Lyra stopped, her silent hands freezing. Then, a soft, warm ripple of amusement touched Anya's mind, distinct and clear. It was a thought form, a gentle chuckle, followed by an image of Lyra untangling a similar mess herself many years ago. Anya stared, astonished. She had projected a thought, a clear, intentional image, and Lyra had understood. And just like that, everything changed. The fear that had kept her telepathy locked away began to recede, replaced by a thrilling sense of possibility. Lyra's eyes, soft and knowing, conveyed encouragement. Anya's initial goal to merely grasp the fundamentals of this new silent existence had transformed. Now, she wanted to truly connect, to bridge the gap not just with gestures, but with her mind. Because of that small success, her shame at her clumsiness began to fade. Maybe, just maybe, this silence held a power she hadn't yet understood. She felt a subtle shift within her, a quiet unfolding. The realization settled deep in her bones. This was the true path to communication here, not just for the pack, but for herself. The shared meals in the Great Hall were always a silent ordeal for Anya, a performance where she constantly felt exposed, yet paradoxically invisible. Today, however, Ronan sat directly opposite her, his golden eyes usually distant, seeming to pierce her very soul. The air around him shimmered with a raw, contained power, a silent storm waiting to break. He consumed his meal with an efficiency that was almost unnerving, yet every now and then, his gaze would flick to her, intense and assessing. Anya, meanwhile, nervously pushed food around her plate, acutely aware of his scrutiny. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt the familiar low hum of his telepathic presence, stronger than anyone else's, like a deep resonance in the earth. She couldn't decipher his specific thoughts, but she perceived his mood, a weighty mix of solemn duty and a lingering, unspoken sorrow. She wanted to ask him about it, to pierce that impenetrable fortress of silence he built around himself. Why do you carry such a burden? The thought, unbidden, formed clearly in her mind, a question she never would have dared to voice aloud. To her shock, Ronan paused, his fork half raised. His golden eyes, which had been fixed on her, now seemed to deepen, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. He didn't respond with hand gestures. Instead, a faint, almost imperceptible pulse of thought brushed against her. It wasn't words, not yet, but a feeling of weary acknowledgement, a faint echo of pain that answered her unspoken question. It was brief, like the beat of a raven's wing, and then it was gone, Ronan resuming his meal as if nothing had happened. Anya's breath hitched. She had reached him, not with words, but with a silent plea. A thrill, hot and undeniable, coursed through her veins. A small, silent victory. This was her power, growing stronger, allowing her to connect in ways she never imagined. She felt a surge of defiance, a quiet rebellion against her enforced voicelessness. Maybe, she thought, her internal voice now clearer, stronger. I don't need words to be heard after all. That's why Ronan's silent acknowledgement was so profound. It validated her emerging telepathy. Anya, now emboldened, met his gaze, holding it, a silent challenge, a new understanding passing between them. The stakes had been subtly raised. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about connection, about unlocking the secrets of this silent world, and perhaps the silent man who ruled it. The tension broke as Ronan finished his meal, rising without a sound, his powerful presence leaving a lingering impression of unspoken mystery. The pack's daily rhythm, once an inscrutable mystery, now pulsed with a subtle, comprehensible rhythm in Anya's mind. She practiced constantly, in quiet moments in her chambers, during walks in the snow-dusted courtyards, even during silent meals. She found herself picking up more than just surface thoughts. She began to sense underlying emotions, unspoken anxieties, and even fragmented memories. Her connection to Ronan, however, remained the most profound. His mental presence was a constant, powerful hum, like a distant thunder, always there. One afternoon, Anya overheard, or rather, overfelt, a heated, silent argument between two high-ranking warriors regarding a dwindling winter supply of dried meat. The telepathic exchange was sharp, bordering on hostile. Their shared thoughts were a jumble of accusations and stubborn pride. Anya, remembering her past triumphs in diplomacy, decided to intervene. She projected a calming influence, an image of unity, and then a suggestion, perhaps a joint hunting party. Double the numbers, double the chances. Immediately, the two warriors ceased their mental sparring. Their heads snapped toward her, their expressions a mix of surprise and wary curiosity. One, a stern-faced male named Roran, projected a thought of skepticism, outsider interference. The other, a younger, more hot-headed warrior, simply radiated annoyance. Anya tried again, focusing her will, projecting the logic of her suggestion, the benefit for the entire pack. But her mental voice was still unrefined, a little too forceful. As a result, her well-intentioned intervention was met with stiff mental resistance, almost like a wall. Instead of easing the tension, her attempt inadvertently solidified their individual stances, because neither wished to appear swayed by an outsider's thought. The silent argument simmered back to life, more intense than before. Anya retreated, frustrated. She hadn't calmed them, she'd only agitated them further. Her elegant diplomacy, so effective with spoken words, was clumsy and ineffective in this telepathic realm. Why can't they just see the logic? She thought, a wave of despair washing over her. She was trying to help, but her efforts felt like fumbling in the dark. Despite that, a flicker of something new registered in Ronan's distant presence, a flash of concern, perhaps even a hint of respect for her attempt. She felt it, clear as day, a subtle acknowledgement from him that both unnerved and intrigued her. The tension between Anya and Ronan had been a simmering undercurrent, a silent storm always threatening to break. His stoicism remained a fortress, yet there were moments, fleeting glances, where Anya felt the weight of his hidden gaze, the intensity of his unspoken thoughts. She'd learned to read the subtle shifts in his telepathic presence, a tightening, a release, a ripple that hinted at deeper emotions. Today, however, was different. Ronan had sought her out, not for a meal or observation, but for a private meeting in a secluded chamber deep within the fortress. The air crackled with anticipation. He gestured for her to sit across from him, his golden eyes fixed on hers. His mental presence was a focused beam, more direct than usual, but still veiled. Anya's heart skipped. Was he finally going to reveal something? He extended his hand, palm up, a silent invitation. Anya hesitated for a heartbeat, then slowly, tentatively, placed her own hand in his. The moment their skin touched, a raw, elemental force surged through her. It wasn't the brief jolt from their mating ceremony. This was a torrent, a floodgate opening. Anya was plunged into a vortex of Ronan's past, fragmented images assaulting her senses. She saw a young Ronan, laughing, speaking freely. She heard his voice, strong and resonant. Then, a scene of chaos, betrayal, a flash of dark magic, a crippling pain, and the abrupt, horrifying snap of his voice being ripped away. The agony was visceral, so real, Anya cried out, a sound that finally escaped her lips, raw and startled. But the most shocking revelation wasn't Ronan's pain, it was the magic itself. Anya felt its oppressive weight, its intricate weaving within her own mind. And she was unaffected. She could touch it, trace its lines, understand its malevolent design without being silenced. Her immunity was not just a shield, it was a mirror. In that same terrifying, exhilarating moment, she felt Ronan's deep, ancient secret. The curse was interwoven with his very bloodline, a festering wound that had silenced his ancestors for generations, and only a direct conduit to the curse itself could unravel it. His golden eyes, wide with a dawning awe, mirrored her own shock. He sensed it, her innate imperviousness, the profound significance of what she was. His strong hand tightened around hers, a silent, almost desperate question in his touch. This wasn't just about her survival anymore. It was about the fate of his entire pack, their forgotten voices, their stolen past. Just like that, everything changed. Anya reeled from the revelation, her mind buzzing with the enormity of it all. Her immunity wasn't just a quirk, it was a key, perhaps the key, to an ancient curse. She looked at Ronan, whose expression had shifted from shock to a guarded intensity. He pulled his hand away, his mental presence receding, becoming once again a fortress. It was as if he'd shown her a raw, bleeding wound, only to immediately seal it away. Anya felt a pang of confusion, then a frustrated yearning to understand. Why pull back now? She projected, a silent question aimed at his retreating mental wall. There was no direct answer, only a ripple of distant turmoil. As the silence stretched, Anya's heightened telepathic senses began to pick up something else, faint but persistent, like static on the wind. Mental whispers from outside the pack's network. They were fragmented, cold, filled with words like immunity, heritage, exploit. She strained, trying to focus, but the thoughts were elusive, like smoke. She felt a growing dread, a cold knot forming in her stomach. Someone knew. Someone was watching, and they wanted what she possessed. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her unique power, the very thing that could save Ronan's pack, also made her a target. Her world tilted, precarious and fragile.
Ronan felt Anya's telepathic query, a soft, probing touch against his newly resealed mental walls. He wanted to answer, to explain the profound terror that had just ripped through him. Her immunity was a miracle, a potential salvation, but also a blinding beacon. He'd known, deep in his shifter instincts, that her arrival was tied to the curse. But to feel her touch the very magic that had silenced his lineage, it was overwhelming and terrifying. He'd kept his distance for years, his silence a shield not just for himself, but for his people. Now Anya was here, vibrant and powerful, and her very existence was an open invitation to the malevolent forces that had always hunted their kind. He felt the subtle shift in the air, the faint predatory whispers that Anya was now picking up. They were growing bolder, circling his pack, drawn by the new light Anya emitted. They know, he thought, a silent snarl ripping through his mind. His greatest fear was not for himself, but for his pack, for Anya. He had promised his ancestors to protect his people, even if it meant eternal silence. Now that promise was threatened. He looked at Anya, her face pale with new understanding, and his heart ached with a raw, protective instinct. He had to push her away, make her seem less valuable, even as every fiber of his being screamed to pull her closer, to shield her with his own body. He stood abruptly, his mental presence hardening into an unyielding fortress once more, a desperate attempt to protect her from the shadows he knew were now closing in. But deep down, he knew the truth. It was already too late. The hunter was now the hunted.
The chilling whispers of unknown threats now mingled with the constant hum of the pack's telepathy, a discordant melody in Anya's mind. The realization that her immunity wasn't just a revelation, but a dangerous beacon had solidified her resolve. She wasn't just a pawn anymore. She was a piece on the board, and she intended to play. Her immediate goal was clear: understand the curse. She felt a burning urgency, a desperate need for answers that overshadowed her lingering fear. Ronan's distant withdrawal, though painful, only fueled her determination. Armed with the cryptic symbol she'd glimpsed during her revelation, Anya sought out the oldest sections of the pack's vast, silent library. Dust motes danced in the sparse shafts of light that pierced the high windows. Ancient scrolls, their leather bindings cracked with age, lined shelves that stretched to the ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of old parchment and forgotten secrets. Anya worked tirelessly, tracing faded runes, comparing symbols, her mind a whirlwind of focused energy. She wasn't looking for words. She was looking for patterns, for connections, for the very essence of the silencing magic she could now touch. Because of her heightened telepathy, she began to perceive the faint, ghostly imprints of thoughts left by those who had studied these texts centuries ago. Fragments of fear, confusion, and desperate hope. One evening, deep into her solitary research, Anya found a series of intricately drawn star charts interwoven with a family tree, detailing Ronan's lineage. A specific star cluster, known as the Silent Eye, recurred alongside a recurring symbol, the very one she had seen in her vision with Ronan. This pattern suggested a celestial origin to the curse, something far older and more complex than she had imagined. But the charts were incomplete, parts deliberately erased or lost to time. Anya knew she needed more, perhaps something only the pack elders would remember. Gathering her courage, Anya approached Lyra, her gentle mentor, and through careful, intentional projections showed her the star chart and the symbol. Lyra's eyes widened, a rare flicker of alarm crossing her usually serene face. She didn't speak, but her thoughts, clearer than ever, flowed into Anya's mind. The Shadow Weavers. They were thought to be gone. Forbidden magic. The words weren't spoken, but Anya felt the chill of their meaning, the weight of a history shrouded in fear. Lyra, visibly pained, then projected ancient images, a powerful dark magic consuming voices, draining life from the land. She projected a name that chilled Anya to the bone. Kaelin. The weight of this new knowledge settled heavily on Anya's shoulders. She now had a name and a terrifying history to unravel. She realized she wasn't just researching a curse, she was uncovering an ancient, living threat. The weight of the new information about Kaelin and the Shadow Weavers pressed heavily on Anya's mind. She sought out Ronan, driven by an urgent need to share what she'd found, to collaborate. She found him in the training yard, his movements in the silent practice session fluid and lethal, a predator in human form. When he noticed her, he paused, his golden eyes meeting hers with an unspoken question. Anya walked towards him, her heart thrumming. The connection between them had deepened profoundly since their shared revelation. It was a silent storm, intense and undeniable, conveyed through charged glances and accidental touches that lingered, igniting a quiet fire within her. She projected her findings, the star chart, the name Kaelin, the whispered fear of the Shadow Weavers. Ronan's mental presence flared, a sudden surge of controlled fury and grim recognition. He dismissed the training, his warriors dispersing silently. Then he led Anya to his private study, a sparsely furnished room dominated by a single massive map of their territory. He didn't speak, but his telepathic connection to her deepened, allowing her to feel the raw edge of his emotions. He opened his mind, not just to thoughts, but to feelings, a deep, profound guilt over the past betrayal that had silenced his voice, the crushing burden of his silent leadership, and a desperate, agonizing hope that Anya, with her unique immunity, might truly be their salvation. He projected images of his family, vibrant and speaking, then silenced. He showed her his own transformation, the pain, the isolation. He confessed silently, his fear that she would reject him, his voicelessness a mark of shame. Anya felt it all, a torrent of empathy and burgeoning love washing over her. She reached out, placing her hand gently on his arm, and projected back her own feelings, understanding, acceptance, and a fierce, unspoken promise. She wasn't afraid of his silence. She saw the strength within it, the man he truly was. Their desire for each other was a palpable, silent storm. The space between them thickened, charged with unspoken words, with raw, primal yearning. He leaned in, his breath warm on her skin, and for a fleeting moment, their lips brushed, a soft, breathless contact that sent shivers through her. It was a promise, a question, a silent vow all at once.
He had felt Anya's urgency, her new discoveries rippling through the pack's shared consciousness. The words Shadow Weavers and Kaelin had sent a cold dread through him, a name from the darkest legends. He knew instinctively that his ancestors' curse was tied to this ancient evil, but when Anya projected the star chart, a dawning realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The specific alignment. It pointed to something far more sinister. A ritual, not just a curse. This wasn't merely a silent confession. It was the unfolding of a prophecy. He dismissed his warriors, needing to be alone with her, to confront the truth his lineage had buried. As Anya presented her findings, he opened his mind to her, an act of unprecedented vulnerability. He showed her his pain, his burden, the memory of his voice being ripped away, the faces of his silent ancestors. He saw in her eyes, not fear, but understanding and a deep, unwavering compassion. This woman, the one sold to him as a treaty, was becoming the very heart of his world. When she touched his arm, a current of profound acceptance flowed through her, shattering fragments of his long-held shame. Her telepathic reply, a silent promise, ignited a spark of hope he hadn't dared to nurture in centuries. Their lips brushing, a breath of shared air felt like a sacred communion. He wanted to pull her close, to bury himself in her warmth, to finally, truly feel. But then a warning, a faint, predatory scrape against the edges of the pack's mental network. It was the same sinister presence he'd felt before, stronger now. They were aware. They were closing in. Anya's presence, her burgeoning power, was a beacon to them. He stiffened, his protective instincts flaring. He had to keep her safe, even if it meant pushing her away. He pulled back from their embrace, his mind snapping shut around his most vulnerable thoughts. His silent, protective roar was a desperate plea to the universe.
The faint predatory hum that Ronan had felt, Anya now perceived with chilling clarity. It was close. Too close. Her instincts screamed danger, a primal alarm blaring in her mind. She tried to warn Ronan, projecting the urgency, the growing threat, but he was already moving, issuing silent commands to his pack, a whirlwind of preparedness. He had known this was coming. He had tried to shield her. Anya was in the main hall, trying to discern the source of the danger, when the world exploded. Without warning, a searing wave of dark magic slammed into the stronghold. It wasn't the silencing magic of the curse. This was raw, aggressive, designed to disorient. A blinding flash erupted, followed by a deafening, unnatural silence where even her own internal thoughts seemed to stall. Chaos erupted, but it was a silent chaos. Warriors moving without sound, their telepathic cries muted, distorted. Anya felt a sudden, sharp pain as a dark-cloaked figure emerged from the swirling magical residue, their face obscured. Before she could move, strong hands clamped around her arms, pulling her backward, away from the skirmish. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum in her ears. She struggled, her newfound telepathic strength surging, but the figure radiated mental interference, a chaotic static that made her thoughts jumble. She saw Ronan, a blur of fury, fighting his way towards her, his golden eyes blazing with desperation. He moved like a storm, tearing through the attackers, but there were too many. He was fighting fiercely, his silent roars echoing only in her mind. As she was dragged towards a gaping hole in the wall, blasted open by the magic, Anya made one last desperate attempt. She focused all her will, all her fear, all her burgeoning love for Ronan, and projected a single, raw image into his mind. The silent eye. Kaelin. It was a flash, a final desperate message before darkness swallowed her whole. She felt the chill of the night air, the rough texture of the attacker's cloak, and then, nothing but the horrifying realization that she was completely, utterly alone. Her world shrunk to the terrifying sound of her own gasping breath. She felt the cruel irony of it. She had just begun to find her voice, only to have it ripped away once more. The world outside Anya's new prison was a chilling contrast to the vibrant chaos of her abduction. She lay on a cold, stone floor, the air thick with the metallic tang of old blood and something else, something ancient and malevolent that made her skin crawl. Chains, thick and cold, chafed her wrists and ankles, binding her to the wall of a subterranean cell. Darkness pressed in, broken only by a single flickering torch in a distant sconce, casting dancing shadows that seemed to mock her. Her mind, usually so active, felt sluggish, muffled by the lingering effects of the dark magic that had abducted her. A figure emerged from the gloom, tall and slender, their face obscured by a deep hood. They moved with a predatory grace that sent shivers down Anya's spine. The air around them crackled with a distinct, unsettling energy, different from the pack's harmonious hum. This was the source of the chaotic static that had jumbled her thoughts during the abduction. So the little conduit awakens. A voice, smooth and deceptively soft, sliced through the oppressive silence. It was a human voice, yet it held an alien resonance that made Anya instinctively recoil. "We've been watching you, Luna, such a unique gift wasted on a silent brute." Anya lunged against her chains, a defiant growl rising in her throat, though it was only a whisper in the vast, cold space. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice hoarse but laced with a fury that burned brighter than the torchlight. The cloaked figure chuckled, a dry, rustling sound like dead leaves skittering across stone. "What do we want? The true power of the silent eye. The ancient magic Ronan's pathetic ancestors tried to bury, and you, little Luna, are the key." They stepped closer, and Anya felt a cold, invasive probe at the edges of her mind, trying to breach her defenses. She clamped down, erecting mental walls, channeling her fear and anger into a solid shield. She would not be stripped bare. She would not surrender. She focused on Ronan's face, on the feel of his touch, a memory that fortified her resolve. They want to use me, she realized, the truth a bitter acid in her mouth. Her heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against the chilling reality of her captivity. Her attempts to speak were useless, her words falling flat against the cold stone, emphasizing her helplessness. Every verbal retort she could conjure felt like a pathetic plea. This place, these people, rendered her primary weapon utterly useless. Days blurred into an agonizing cycle of cold, hunger, and relentless mental assault. The cloaked figure, whom Anya now knew as Kaelin from her research, returned repeatedly, their telepathic probes becoming more aggressive, more insistent. Kaelin's goal was clear: to force Anya to fully unleash her immunity, to become a weapon they could control. "Imagine the power," Kaelin's voice, always calm, yet chillingly devoid of empathy, would purr. "The magic that silenced entire bloodlines. With you as the conduit, we can unleash it, not just break it. Imagine what we could do to those who defy us. Your silent alpha will be nothing but dust." Anya resisted, fighting back with every ounce of mental strength she possessed. She wrapped her thoughts in layers of defiance, remembering Lyra's gentle lessons, using Ronan's own silent fortitude as a blueprint. But Kaelin's words, especially the ones about Ronan, cut deep. "He's still silent, isn't he?" Kaelin taunted, a cruel smile visible beneath the hood. "He couldn't even speak your name to save you. A king who cannot roar is no king at all." Anya desperately tried to reach Ronan, to send a mental plea, a beacon of her survival. She focused, channeling her will, trying to find his familiar presence, that deep, constant hum. but there was only static, a distorted, distant echo of his anguish, like a broken signal across a vast, empty chasm. It was faint, fragmented, swallowed by the oppressive magic of her prison. What followed was a wave of pure despair so profound it stole her breath. He hadn't come. He couldn't. He was still voiceless, perhaps even broken by her abduction. The thought that he might be incapable of saving her, that she was truly abandoned, was a torment far worse than the chains. Her deepest fear of being unheard and alone manifested with brutal clarity. She didn't know what scared her more, Kaylin's relentless mental probing or the cold, empty silence where Ronan's comforting presence should have been. Her heart ached with a hollow, crushing pain. She felt it, clear as day, the slow, agonizing death of hope. The weight of her situation was immense. Maybe this was it. Maybe her unique power wasn't a key, but a cage. The despair was a suffocating blanket, heavy and cold. Anya no longer fought the chains, no longer tried to breach the mental static. She lay curled on the stone floor, her body aching, her spirit broken. Kaylin's taunts echoed in the cavern of her mind, reinforcing her core misbelief. She was nothing without her voice. She had relied on her words, then her emerging telepathy, to connect, to exist. Now, both felt useless. She was utterly unheard, a prisoner in her own mind as much as in this cell. She closed her eyes, tears a hot, silent trail on her cold cheeks. She remembered the bustling markets of her home, the vibrant debates, the easy laughter she'd shared with Alara. She saw Ronan's stoic face, his golden eyes, the silent desire that had sparked between them. It all seemed so distant, so utterly lost. This is it, she thought, a quiet resignation settling over her. I am truly alone. She let go. She let go of the need to fight, the need to speak, the need to be heard. She simply existed in the cold, dark silence, allowing it to envelop her. And in that profound surrender, something shifted. The incessant buzzing in her mind, the chaotic static from Kaylin's magic began to quiet. As if the world narrowed, her internal landscape became still, vast, and strangely clear. She wasn't fighting it anymore. She was simply listening to the silence, embracing it. And in that stillness, a single, pure thought cut through the void, undeniable and powerful. It wasn't a jumble. It was a coherent message, filled with a raw, agonizing love and a desperate, unwavering resolve. It was Ronan. His thought resonated deep within her bones, a telepathic roar that spoke of his relentless hunt, his fury, his unyielding promise to find her. He had broken through. He was coming. Anya's eyes snapped open. The despair was gone, replaced by a cold, searing determination. Her internal voice, no longer desperate or frantic, was clear and steady. She had believed her worth was in her voice, but in losing it, she had found a deeper, more primal connection. She felt it, clear as day, her wolf stirring, a latent power, now fully awake, pressing forward within her. She let it happen. Ronan's connection was more than hope. It was a surge of shared strength. She realized then that Kaylin hadn't stripped her bare. They had merely pruned her, allowing her true power to bloom. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. The shift within Anya was profound. A calm, unwavering power unfurling in the core of her being. Ronan's telepathic roar, a beacon of raw love and fury, had cut through the despair, igniting a new fire in her veins. She was no longer just surviving. She was fighting back. Her immediate goal was to contribute to her own rescue, to become an active participant in her freedom. She pressed her palms against the cold stone, focusing her will. Kaylin's magic was a chaotic, discordant static, but now, Anya found she could navigate it, almost like learning to swim through murky water. She began to probe, not to understand her captor's thoughts, but to disrupt them. She targeted the mental pathways of the guards outside her cell, projecting fleeting images of their deepest fears, a looming shadow, a lost loved one, a sudden, inexplicable chill. The effect was subtle at first, a guard momentarily twitching, another glancing nervously over his shoulder. Then she escalated, creating sudden, overwhelming sensations, a phantom itch that demanded scratching, a fleeting scent of burning cloth, a disorienting ripple in their peripheral vision. These were enough to cause confusion, to make them doubt their own senses. She felt a surge of triumph, a quiet, fierce satisfaction. Her mind, once her greatest vulnerability, was now her most potent weapon. With every successful mental manipulation, Anya's confidence soared. She reached out, trying to find Ronan's mental presence again, aiming for a clearer connection. This time, there was no static. His mind, burning with singular focus, was a roaring bonfire in the distance. She poured her will into a single, cohesive thought. I am here. The silent I. Kaelin. She envisioned the star chart, the symbol, the ancient, malevolent power. She flooded the connection with her resolve, her love, her desperate hope. It was a silent promise, a vow hurled across the miles. She didn't know if it reached him, not fully, but she felt a powerful surge of energy flow back, a shared current of determination. The thought resonated deep within her soul, a renewed hope that was stronger because it was shared.
Ronan's world had been a silent scream of anguish since Anya was ripped from his grasp. His inner wolf had clawed at the edges of his control, snarling for vengeance. He had felt the crushing despair from Anya, a soul-deep ache that threatened to consume him. Then, a miracle. A spark. A flash of her unique mental signature cutting through the void. I am here. The silent I. Kaelin. The message hit him like a physical blow, jolting him from his frozen despair. She was alive, she was fighting, and she knew about Kaelin, the ancient terror he'd thought buried. A raw, guttural sound tore from Ronan's throat, a sound he hadn't made in years. It was a growl, born of fury and a desperate, surging hope. It was rough, painful, a tearing sensation in his throat. But it was his. The pack, gathered in the war room, their telepathic communication a frantic buzz of alarm and fear, froze. Their alpha, the silent alpha, had made a sound. Ronan dropped to his knees, clutching his throat, the sound a strange alien thing. But then, another sound. Anya, he forced out, her name a broken whisper, then a rasping cry. It was agonizing, but each syllable was a step towards reclaiming what had been stolen from him. He pushed through the pain, the rusty mechanism of his voice protesting, fueled by Anya's mental message. He had to speak. He had to rally his pack, not just with their shared mind, but with the primal power of his voice. He rose, unsteady at first, then straightened. His voice, still rough, began to deepen, gain power. They took her, he rasped, his eyes blazing, meeting each warrior's gaze. The pack surged, a collective telepathic roar of renewed purpose. The moment Ronan's voice, though broken, pierced the long silence, something ancient shifted within them all. His hope, now magnified by the returning sound of his own voice, resonated with every member of his pack. They would find her. The sound of his own voice, raw and unpracticed, was both a revelation and a torment. Each word scraped against his throat, a constant reminder of the long years of silence. But the memory of Anya's desperate mental message, her courage, fueled him. He stalked the war room, his voice gaining strength with every command, every strategy, every guttural roar that escaped him. Kaelin, he rasped, the name a bitter taste on his tongue, has taken her. He seeks to exploit Anya's immunity to the silencing magic, to unleash its full destructive power, not just break it. His words, once lost, now commanded his pack's complete attention, a primal force they hadn't heard in generations. His warriors, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and renewed ferocity, responded to his spoken words with a fierce, unified telepathic surge. They knew the legends of Kaelin, the ancient sorcerer responsible for the curse that had silenced their lineage. Ronan laid out his plan, a daring assault on the hidden fortress where Kaelin likely held Anya. He spoke of the dangers, the sacrifices, but also of the desperate hope that Anya represented. "She is the key," he declared, his voice deepening, vibrating with conviction. "She can touch the curse without falling prey to it. We will use her immunity. We will break the chains of silence that have bound us for centuries." His voice, though still rough, was a balm to his people, a symbol of their awakening. It felt powerful to utter such a powerful vow. Suddenly, a clear, sharp thought pierced his mind, distinct from the pack's hum. It was Anya. Her projection was a complex array of images and feelings, outlining her own discoveries. She showed him the star chart, the connection between the Silent Eye constellation and the curse, and the horrifying truth. The curse wasn't just magic. It was a living entity, sustained by the silence itself. It needed to be severed at its heart, and only a direct confrontation at the precise location, powered by her immunity, would suffice. It was a profound plan, audacious and terrifying. "We must go to the source." Her thought resonated, together. Ronan's breath hitched. He had feared for her safety, wanted to shield her, but she wasn't waiting for rescue. She was mapping the path to their salvation. His heart swelled with fierce pride and a love so profound it brought him to his knees. He looked at his pack, then back to the mental image of Anya. "She knows the way," he announced, his voice now strong and resonant, filling the hall. "She is leading us." His true voice had returned, not just his physical ability to speak, but the leader, the mate, the protector he was always meant to be.
Trapped in her cell, Anya clung to Ronan's mental presence like a lifeline. She felt his anguish, his fury, and then a monumental shift, the first painful sounds of his voice. Her heart swelled. He was fighting for her, truly fighting. And his voice. It was the most beautiful sound she'd ever imagined. She had projected her discoveries, the chilling truth about the curse's true nature, the star charts, the name Kaelin. She knew, instinctively, that the solution lay not in mere rescue, but in a combined effort, a direct assault on the curse's core. As Ronan's voice grew stronger, each word he uttered a testament to his unbreakable will, Anya felt a profound connection, a true partnership. She was guiding him from within, and he was roaring for her from without. She was no longer powerless. She was an essential part of the fight. The memory of Ronan's silent confessions, his fear of being unheard, now spurred her on. They would face this together. She felt a fierce, joyful determination.
The scent of pine and anticipation filled the crisp night air as Ronan led his pack through the ancient snow-dusted forests. His voice, once a distant echo, was now a resonant roar, guiding his warriors, coordinating their movements. "Flank them!" he bellowed, his voice carrying easily over the rustling snow. His pack moved with silent efficiency, their telepathic cohesion amplified by his booming commands. He felt Anya's presence in his mind, a sharp, guiding beacon. She was projecting images of the antagonist's stronghold, hidden entrances, patrol routes, weak points in their magical defenses. It was as if she saw through stone, laying bare their enemies' secrets. The fortress loomed ahead, a dark, jagged silhouette against the moonlit sky, shrouded in the oppressive magic Anya had described. Ronan felt the familiar static, Kaelin's malevolent presence. But now, it was tinged with Anya's defiant light. "She's cutting through their defenses," he projected to his closest warriors, his voice dropping to a low, powerful growl. "Stay with me." They moved like shadows, a silent tide of powerful wolves driven by their alpha's rediscovered voice and their Luna's unwavering will. His heart pounded a primal drumbeat of anticipation. He could almost taste the moment he would reach her, the moment he would pull her into his arms. The air thickened with magic and adrenaline.
Confined in her cell, Anya felt the surge of Ronan's pack approaching, a powerful wave of fury and determination. Ronan's voice, clear and strong even at this distance, resonated in her mind, a symphony of command and purpose. He was coming. She focused her telepathy, her mind now a finely tuned weapon. Kaylin's guards, already disoriented by her earlier probes, were easy targets. She projected terrifying illusions: walls crumbling, phantom attacks, the sudden appearance of monstrous shadows. Panic erupted among them, their telepathic network dissolving into chaotic fear. She felt Kaylin's frustrated rage, a cold, sharp blade of thought directed at her. "You cannot escape, little witch," Anya countered with a projection of her own, fierce and defiant. "I am not a witch. I am Luna, and my alpha is coming for you." She then focused on the outer magical barriers, using her immunity to find the cracks, the vulnerabilities. She poured her energy into these weak points, amplifying them, creating mental pathways for Ronan's forces to exploit. The sounds of battle began to penetrate her cell. Shouts, impacts, the guttural snarls of wolves. Her breath caught. He was here. A thunderous crash echoed through the dungeon. The thick wooden door to her cell splintered, torn from its hinges. Dust motes danced in the sudden rush of air. Standing in the jagged doorway, framed by the chaos, was Ronan. His golden eyes, blazing with fury and a fierce, possessive love, locked onto hers. His face was streaked with grime, his powerful body radiating raw strength. "Anya!" he roared, his voice rough but utterly magnificent, echoing through the stone halls. He rushed towards her, a force of nature unleashed, ready to reclaim his Luna. His voice was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard, a promise of freedom and love. Ronan's roar, her name echoing through the cold dungeon, was a symphony of salvation. Just like that, everything changed. He reached her, his powerful hands snapping the chains that bound her wrists with effortless strength. The metal clattered to the stone floor, a defiant sound that felt like a victory cry. "Are you harmed?" he growled, his voice still rough but rich with concern, his golden eyes scanning her frantically. Before she could answer, Kaylin's voice, smooth and chilling, sliced through the air. "A touching reunion. Shame it's your last." Kaylin emerged from the shadows at the far end of the chamber, a dark, swirling vortex of oppressive magic surrounding him. His goal was clear: to fully unleash the curse, to destroy them both. "He's at the source," Anya projected to Ronan, her mind now crystal clear, her power surging. "The silent eye, the star chart." She pointed to a grotesque, pulsing altar at the center of the chamber, where swirling shadows seemed to coalesce around an ancient, corrupted stone inscribed with the silent eye symbol. It thrummed with the familiar, malevolent energy of the curse. Ronan's eyes narrowed, his gaze locking onto the altar. "My ancestors' chains," he snarled, his voice low and vibrating with raw fury. He lunged, a blur of dark fur and primal power, but Kaylin met him with a burst of dark energy, slamming Ronan back against the wall. Anya didn't hesitate. She knew what she had to do. With every heartbeat, she channeled her immunity, stepping towards the altar, its foul magic assaulting her senses, but unable to touch her. She felt it, clear as day, the curse's true nature, a parasitic entity feeding on silence. "It feeds on silence!" Anya roared, her own voice surprisingly strong, cutting through the magic-laden air. She reached out, her hands glowing with a soft counterforce, placing them directly on the pulsating stone. Pain ripped through her, not from the curse itself, but from the immense power she was drawing, focusing. She heard Ronan's guttural growls of battle as he engaged Kaylin, their fight a maelstrom of raw power and dark magic. She felt Ronan's mind connect with hers, a shared determination, a silent vow to fight as one. She envisioned her family, Ronan's pack, their voices restored, laughing, shouting. Her goal was to tear the curse apart, piece by agonizing piece.
He tore the chains from Anya's wrists, his heart roaring with relief and a possessive fury that made his wolf surge forward. He had found her. He would never let her go again. Kalen's taunting voice was a red haze before his eyes, but Anya's sharp mental commands cut through his rage. The silent eye. The source. He saw the corrupted altar, pulsing with the very magic that had damned his lineage. A growl rose in his throat. "He will not touch you again," Ronan roared at Kalen, his voice now fully restored, vibrating with ancient power as he charged. Kalen unleashed bolts of shadowy magic, but Ronan deflected them, his body a blur of strength and precision. He fought not just with physical might, but with the raw, untamed power of a newly unburdened alpha. He saw Anya at the altar, her face contorted with effort, channeling the curse through her. He felt her pain, her resolve, a direct line forged between their souls. "My Luna," Ronan roared, a declaration that echoed off the stone walls, his voice laced with desperate love and unwavering devotion. He tackled Kalen, slamming him against the altar. "You stole our voices. You will not have hers." Kalen shrieked, his magic sputtering. As if fate demanded it, Ronan pressed Kalen's hand onto the cursed stone alongside Anya's. Anya gasped, drawing Kalen's chaotic energy into the curse's heart. With a final, agonizing effort, Anya pushed, channeling her immunity, while Ronan, his voice tearing free from centuries of silence, bellowed a single, powerful command. "Break!" A blinding flash of pure white light erupted from the altar, consuming Kalen in a silent scream. The stone cracked, then shattered into dust. An immense wave of energy, cold and pure, washed over them. Then, silence. But this silence was different. It was clean, expectant. And just like that, everything changed. A ripple started, then a wave, then a joyous, overwhelming cacophony of sound. Gasps, cries, shouts of elation, laughter. The voices of his pack, long lost, had returned. Ronan, tears streaming down his face, pulled Anya into his arms, crushing her against him. He spoke for the first time in years, not just her name, but vows of love and devotion, his voice a balm to her soul. "My Anya, my love, my voice."
The sheer, exhilarating noise was overwhelming, yet utterly beautiful. It was a symphony of rediscovered sounds, the joyful shouts of Ronan's warriors, the triumphant cries of those who had burst into the chamber, their voices, once muted by the curse, now gloriously unrestrained. Ronan held her close, his body trembling, his voice, a deep resonance against her ear, repeating her name. "Anya, my brave Luna, my voice." Tears streamed down her face, not of sorrow, but of pure, unadulterated joy. The scent of his skin, the feel of his arms around her, was the most real thing she had ever known. His words, simple yet profound, filled the void that had consumed her for so long. Meanwhile, the remnants of Kalen's dark magic dissipated like smoke, leaving only a lingering chill. Kalen himself was gone, consumed by the very curse he sought to wield. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of relief and raw emotion. Pack members stumbled into the shattered chamber, their faces etched with shock and then overwhelming elation as they heard their own voices, their brothers' and sisters' voices, for the first time in generations. They wept, they laughed, they embraced, a chaotic, beautiful mess of rediscovered sound. Anya, still in Ronan's arms, reached out mentally, offering comfort, guiding their initial jumbled telepathic cries into coherent thought. She felt their gratitude, a warm, overwhelming wave of shared joy. Ronan pulled back slightly, his golden eyes, wet with unshed tears, searching hers. He gently cupped her face. You did it, Anya. You saved us. You gave us back our voices." His voice, though still raw with emotion, was steady, full, a miracle. She leaned into his touch, savoring the solid, real presence of him, the man who was no longer silent, the man who had found his voice because of her. She felt their bond, stronger now, woven with both spoken words and the silent language of their souls. The tension broke into a shared sigh of profound relief, marking the end of a terrifying journey.
The sound. It was everything. The world had exploded into sound, a symphony of his pack's rediscovered voices. He held Anya, crushing her against him, burying his face in her hair, breathing her in. "My Anya, my love, my voice," he repeated, the words tasting like nectar on his tongue, each syllable a profound truth that resonated deep within his bones. He could speak. He could finally tell her, with words, the depth of his feelings. He watched, through tear-filled eyes, as his pack erupted in joyous chaos. Warriors hardened by years of silent communication now wept openly, their voices cracking with emotion as they called out to each other. He saw a mother embrace her child, their voices mingling in pure relief. It was a sight he had only ever dreamed of, a future he thought forever lost. Anya, still in his embrace, reached out with her mind, her presence a calming anchor in the overwhelming surge of emotion. She was guiding them, helping them navigate the cacophony, a true Luna, a voice for their reborn pack. He pulled back, needing to see her, to impress upon her the magnitude of what she had done. Her face, tear-streaked and beautiful, glowed with a triumphant light. "You saved us," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his thumb brushing her cheek. He could feel the depth of her love, her understanding, not just through their mental bond, but through the vibrant life in her eyes. The centuries of silence, the burden he had carried, had finally been lifted. Because of Anya, his pack was whole again. Their future, once shrouded in the silent torment of the curse, now stretched before them, a canvas waiting for the joyous clamor of life.
Months later, the northern stronghold buzzed with a vibrant, beautiful noise. Laughter echoed through the great hall. Stories were told around crackling fires, and the sounds of children playing filled the courtyards. The silence that had once defined this place was gone, replaced by the symphony of a thriving vocal pack. Anya, standing beside Ronan on a sun-drenched balcony overlooking the revitalized lands, felt a profound sense of peace. She was no longer a living treaty. She was their Luna, not just in title, but in every fiber of her being. She often found herself seamlessly shifting between spoken words and telepathic communication. "The southern trade caravans arrive tomorrow," she said aloud to Ronan, her voice clear and confident, a stark contrast to the strangled whispers of her arrival. "They're bringing mountain herbs we desperately need." Then she sent a silent thought, laced with amusement, and perhaps some of that surprisingly good fruit wine. Ronan chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that made her heart skip. He responded aloud, "Indeed, a successful negotiation, thanks to your silver tongue, my Luna." But his mind also sent back, "And your silver mind." Their communication was a rich tapestry, woven with both spoken and unspoken threads, a testament to their unique bond. Anya often held workshops for the pack, helping them relearn the nuances of verbal communication, encouraging those who still hesitated. She told stories, not just of her old life, but of their shared triumph, of Ronan finding his voice, of the pack reclaiming their sound. Her presence was a constant reminder that being heard meant more than just speaking. It meant being understood, truly understood, in all forms. The thought of being trapped in a gilded cage, her mind stripped bare and her soul unheard, was now a distant, vanquished terror. She was free.
Life with Anya was a revelation, a constant symphony that thrilled his senses. He spoke now, easily and often, his voice a deep, resonant rumble that had once been lost to him. He found joy in simple conversations, in the sound of Anya's laughter, in the boisterous shouts of his pack children. He was still the silent alpha in name, but his silence was now a choice, a comfort he shared only with Anya in moments of deep intimacy. He watched her interact with the pack, her vibrant energy infectious. She was truly the voice of their people, teaching them not just to speak, but to connect. "The healers are requesting more of that mountain feverfew," Anya spoke aloud, her voice clear. "And for the new pups, extra warm pelts," her thought added, a soft, warm touch in his mind. Ronan nodded, a profound sense of gratitude washing over him. He had found his voice, yes, but he had found his true self, his true purpose in loving Anya. Their connection was a constant, shimmering thread, a silent understanding that transcended any words. Their happily ever after was a world filled with the beautiful noise of a love that learned to communicate in the deepest silence. Epilogue. Years later, the northern winds still whispered through the ancient trees, but they carried the joyful sounds of life. Anya and Ronan stood on a high bluff, their hands intertwined, watching their children play in the sun-dappled valley below. Their eldest, a spirited young boy with his mother's quick mind, shouted instructions to his younger sister. The girl, with her father's golden eyes, responded with a silent, teasing thought, a flash of shared mischief. They moved between spoken words and telepathy with effortless grace, a testament to the world their parents had built. Anya's voice, warm and melodious, carried on the breeze as she finished a story about their pack's long-lost history, a tale filled with shadows and then glorious light. Ronan, his arm wrapped around her, smiled, his gaze tender. He sometimes spoke of the years of silence, a stark contrast to the richness of their present. Their life was a testament to love's power, a vibrant, noisy tapestry woven from shared dreams, rediscovered voices, and the profound, beautiful connection forged in the deepest silence.